Corporal Helen Denton, United States Army, World War II. Folks, what a rare story I've got for you today. This story with Helen Denton has been sitting in my archives 21 years. She is featured in my second film on Omaha Beach, but for the most part her interview's been sitting idle, but it's time to share it. And when you hear what she did, you're going to just be amazed, especially those of you who love history. So I met Helen in Washington, D.C., May 27, 2004, 2 days before the dedication of the World War II Memorial, which I was there with the media that day, and just an incredible time that was. That memorial was a little bit too late. Many of the veterans had already died, but thank God it's there. But I met Helen. I did about an hour interview with her, and she went into the Army, I believe it was about 1943, and was very involved with the Normandy invasion, Operation Overlord, D-Day. Helen was a corporal, and she typed for 8 weeks the battle plans and the orders for the invasion of Normandy and the liberation of Europe, Operation Overlord, D-Day. Folks, listen to that. Did you hear what I said? She typed the battle plans and the orders for 8 weeks. She typed every day, triple carbon copies of everything, stapled, put in notebooks. It was yay thick when it was all done. But she knew the ships that were going to be used, how many ships, how many men, where they're going to come, where they're going to go, the boats, the airborne drops, just everything. But the thing is she was sworn to secrecy. It was top secret. Everything, every page was stamped top secret, so she couldn't tell anybody. She met her husband, Noel Denton, Sergeant Denton, in the Army. They fell in love on Omaha Beach. Just a wonderful love story. Just really, it just touches my heart. Had one son, Jonathan, and he died in 1982, and Noel died of a heart attack in 1982, shortly after their son died. How tragic that was. And Helen went on and lived her life. But she didn't even tell her husband what she did. So that's how, in confidence, the work that they did. In fact, one of the officers brought Helen into the General Eisenhower's office, and he asked her, do you know what you typed? And she said yes, and she told him. So just a wonderful story. You know, not a combat in the trenches story, but I tell you what, I admire her. It was such a great interview. I knew I had something special, and I get to share it with my YouTube family today. So hopefully you'll appreciate the history of what she did. I want to thank Angie Simmons. Angie is the wife of Terry Simmons, the Vietnam veteran who I've interviewed. You've seen Terry's story, folks. And Angie's been a supporter of my work, and I just want to thank Angie for allowing me these opportunities to share the stories of women in war. I've got a whole series called Women in War. And so, Angie, I thank you. I hope you and Terry are doing well. God bless you guys, and I just thank you for your support of my work and making it possible to hear Helen's story today. It's such a good story. So, okay, folks, what haven't I told you about Helen Denton? Hopefully I won't think about it after I turn the camera off, but I'm just really pleased to share it with you. It's such a part of history. She was making history, and I've been to Omaha Beach 3 times. It's holy ground. And to know that she typed those plans, the invasion, and like I said, the airborne drops and everything, the assault landings, the landing crafts, I can just imagine what she did. And to keep a secret for 60 years, and I was one of the first people she told her story to, so I was very thankful for that. We lost Helen about 10, 12 years ago, and she lived, like I said, she lived a full life, and God bless her. And I'm glad to be able to share this with you. So I'd ask you to share this story with others. Get it into the hands of our kids. They need to learn this history, folks. You know, history is best learned from those who were there. And that's what this documentary series is about, why we're free, to honor our veterans and to share it with our younger generation. It's so, so important. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, go ahead and do it. Voices of History Radio will be airing this story once it airs here on the YouTube channel. And I've got almost 300 stories on Voices of History Radio. So if you want to listen to the stories anytime, day or night, any part of the world, tune into Voices of History Radio. You can get it on my website, larrycapello.com, or download a free app at the Google Play Store. That's it, folks. I'm out of here. Thank you for watching and listening. God bless you. And for those of you who do support my work, God bless you. And I'll talk to you soon. I'm just going to first ask you, just tell me basically an overview of your involvement with around D-Day and what you were doing, and then we'll get more specific. But just tell me your position, where you were around, 1944, around June, and because I don't even know. So tell me where you were and who you were working for and what your duties were at that time.
2 days, a day before D-Day, we noticed the planes were flying over London, just one right after the other, day and night. That made me stop and think something was happening. But the morning of D-Day, I pulled KP. I had to go to the mess hall. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, and of course in London it was light by then, and I thought, this doesn't seem right. Something's happening. It wasn't long before I arrived at the mess hall when the captain said, we've got a special broadcast coming on in just a few minutes. And it was Churchill saying, today is D-Day. And that was the first. And what went through my mind, because people have asked me that, first thing I thought, I know how many people are going to get killed. I knew how many would have to go through the barrage of landing on Omaha Beach, because that was the main one. And I knew so much of what was going to happen those first day or two that it made me shudder. In fact, I don't think I ate all that day because I was so worried about it. And of course, as soon as the information came back of how many were killed, how many were injured, that were brought back to London to go into the hospital, it brought it back to me that this was more than just a infiltration of our men going into Europe. This was the war.
How was that information coming back? Through telegraph? Through radio communications? Or how was the casualties? How were you finding out about all that?
Because I was not in the office that day. I was working in KP. It wasn't until the next day that it was coming through word of mouth in our office.
How do you, you were a young woman. How were you feeling about, you said you knew a lot of guys were going to get killed. How did you assume that? Through the job that you had, working?
Probably because of what I had typed up. Because it was very explicit of what would be expected.
Tell me about how you got into that position, and then tell me about actually typing those little battle plans. I want to know that story.
When there were 30 of us girls that were assigned to General Eisenhower's staff. Half of us were secretaries and the other half were telephone operators. So the morning that we reported into headquarters, they assigned me to a very small room and said that I would be taking dictation from 2 Americans, 1 British, 1 Canadian, and 1 Australian officer. And each day, 1 or 2 would come in, and they would dictate to me, and this would be what their particular army was going to be doing on the invasion. I had a guard on the outside the door so nobody else could come in. And when the day was over, the MP would come in and he'd take the ribbon off my typewriter. And of course I was using a manual typewriter with carbon paper. So he would take all the carbon paper that I had left and burn it in the fireplace, which was security. And every page that I typed, I had to stamp top secret on it. So I knew what I was typing. Several people have asked me, how fast could you type? And I said it wasn't how fast, it was how accurate, because I didn't want to erase when you make a mistake.
Is it confidential to tell me some of what you typed about Omaha Beach, or do you remember anything, or did you type anything specific to Omaha Beach?
It not only was Omaha Beach, it was all up and down the coast, because Montgomery was supposed to come in at Antwerp, and that's where the V-2 bombs were manufactured. And his job was to go in and take out the Germans in Antwerp so we wouldn't be bombed. I don't remember where the others were. I know it was all up and down the coast, which each army was supposed to come in because that's the type of information they gave me. But it was general information. It wasn't specific, but they made it so plain that anybody could take these papers and write their orders up for it.
So Omaha Beach was divided into sectors. Did you have anything to do with typing, Fox Red, Fox Green,
No,
Easy Red, nothing
no.
like that?
If I did, I don't remember.
Okay. Okay.
60 years. And like they impressed on us, at least me, don't remember anything that you've typed. You're going to have to forget everything that you've typed. And I think that's why I never told anybody what I had done. And maybe there were other girls that were typing top secret things too, but we never talked about it. My roommate or any of the girls that I associated with, that we did things with.
Were you all kind of held in a certain area? You couldn't go out and there was a security all over?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Now, our office was secured and the secretaries all came together. We each had a private office or an office that we were assigned to. And we lived in what we call a pension. They furnished rooms and served tea in the afternoon, but we ate in the mess hall. And it was at Berkeley Square. And it wasn't after the V2s was hitting London so that they moved us down to the underground shelter for nighttime. We could take care of ourselves in the daytime, hiding under the desk or in the security room, but at night, our hotel was being hit, so we had to go underground.
Again, is it okay 60 years later for you to tell me some of what you were typing? I mean, what were you typing when you're saying battle plans and people could understand it? I mean, I'm curious. I'm not sure of the dialogue that was being told you or what you had to say.
We talked about how many ships and how many men on a ship that would cross the channel, okay, and where they would land, and the number of LSTs that it would take to take them off of the ship so they can go into shore. We talked about the number of men, which was tremendous. We're talking about thousands of men. And what units it would, whether it was going to be just off the top of my head, like the Army, the air, whatever. We talked about, they put down how many planes it would take and how they would go over and where they would drop their bombs and when they would come back.
And now this information went to who after you were done with it? Went to the Eisenhower and
Yes.
he gave it to his commanders and it went
I
down?
don't know what had happened after that. That's as far as I got with it. And I didn't ask questions.
No, that's,
Someone has asked me, do you think you could go over to headquarters and find out and go back and read what you typed? And I said, probably, but I wouldn't be that interested in it. That's past history.
Just looking back 60 years on D-Day now, what are your thoughts about D-Day? I mean, the significance of it and how important that was.
I would say that General Eisenhower must have had a very good command of Army tactics to have designed, and it had to be him that did it. He may have told his subordinates what to do, but it was his decision and his planning for the invasion to be as successful as it was.
Were you aware of the letter he wrote of defeat that he had drafted and dated it July 5th? He meant June 5th, but he had written a version of defeat in the event that we were successful at landing. Were you aware of that at all?
No, sir.
I've seen a copy of that, and I've seen it published in a book too, but to me that was kind of an interesting thing that he had drafted that letter up. But did you meet the man personally?
Just the once.
Okay.
Just the once. When I finished the typing and the officers came in and said, this is it now, we've finished. and we put it in a book form. Would you like to go with us when we take it up to him? And that was the first time that I ever met him. So I walked up into his office, and he turned to me and he said, "Do you know what you've typed?" I said, "Yes, these are the battle plans you'll use for the invasion." I had made 3 copies. He said, "The second copy I think you'd like to address. It's going to General MacArthur, and he will use it for the invasion of Japan." And then he said, "Do you know that you have a brother over here?" Now here's a man who has thousands of men under his jurisdiction. He knew enough about me to know that I had a brother over there. I said, "Yes, but I don't know where he is because, see, we all had APO numbers. And there's no way you can find out where he is." He knew I was in London, but that's as far as he knew. He said, he's at Salisbury, England. He's under General Patton, 3rd Armored Division. And he said, "Here's a pass I'm giving you to go and spend the weekend with him." It had been 3 years since I'd seen him. And he said, "All arrangements, I've already made all arrangements." He said, "You're going to stay at the Red Cross office." He said, "Your brother's going to get a pass for the weekend and a Jeep so he can take you around." And he said, "You're going to have a good weekend." So I went home, packed my bag, caught the train, and went to Salisbury.
Oh, wonderful. What did you do after that? I mean, after you'd done the battle plans, I mean, first tell me, what was your position? What was your title in the? Were you in the Army?
Yes.
Okay. What was your rank and position and title?
Technical fifth grade.
That was your MOS, technical 5th grade, U.S. Army.
Yes.
Okay. What did you do after D-Day? I mean, what did you?
We didn't do too much. We had chance to do some sightseeing. We knew the invasion was on. We were on hold until they decided what they were going to do with us.
So, Gold, Juno, Sword, Utah, and Omaha Beach. You typed battle plans for these
those
beach landings, the LSTs, probably the small landing crafts that took them in, and which company and all that.
Yes,
so,
yes.
That's amazing. And were you familiar with any of these naval ships? I mean, the LST, LCVP, or whatever they were called, or anything like that?
It was just information that I was typing, which I tried very hard to forget. Because I didn't, it was brought home to me one time when they told me that I was going to have to go over to Admiralty, which was British headquarters. And one man escorted me in a taxi. We went to there because they wanted me to pick up some type of information that the British wanted to go into our program or our paperwork. And when they came back, we started back. The man that went over with said he had something else to do, so they called an MP to come back with me, which meant that I was carrying confidential information that they had to have an escort for me. I think that was the one time when I realized, hey, I'm doing something a little bit extraordinary.
You may have said it, but I think I missed it, but how was the information given to you to type?
Most of the time they dictated it. And other times they would have pulled it out of other papers and handed it to me and said, add this to what I've given you, and added it to it. And it was always ship movements, people movements, when were the armies going to go in.
So at the time of you doing this dictation, did you realize the significance of what you're doing?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's one reason why I tried very hard to forget it.
Yeah, yeah.
I realized that, I remembered what they said before we went over, that we were doing top secret work, and it was very important that we forget it.
I've seen the word stamped on a top secret document, the letters BIGOT. Does that mean anything to you, or is that something that I may have not seen right?
was that a designation of anything top secret, or is that something that you're familiar with?
I don't remember it.
That's fine.
If it did, I don't remember.
How many years were you in the military?
Went in 1943, beginning of 43, and got out in October of 45. So it's just a little, almost 3 years.
I want to get your thoughts on Omaha Beach. Did you see Saving Private Ryan?
No.
Okay. The only reason I mentioned that is Steven Spielberg depicted the beach landing at the first part of that movie, and most of the veterans I've talked to have seen that movie said it was a pretty accurate portrayal of what happened. But really, the American public couldn't really stomach what happened. What I wanted to ask you was your knowledge of Omaha Beach then and now, looking back. I mean, what does Omaha Beach mean to you as far as D-Day and all that?
Probably a very picturesque place. I can't imagine it. I can't imagine it the way it was during then, because we landed on Utah, which was different. It was further on down the coast, and our beach was flat, so that when we came in out of the water, we just came up the bank and we were in an open field. The headquarters, the fighting was right up ahead of us, and we could hear the guns, but we knew that we had to stay back.
Now, tell me now, you went into the beach.
Yes.
Tell me about that. How you went in and what was going on when you went in.
Well, our hotel had been hit the day before, and when we came back to the hotel, our orders were to pack up, that we were going to Southampton to board a ship. We were going to go across. So we boarded. We waited on Southampton until midnight, nearly midnight, 10 o'clock, something like that, because by then, it gets dark. But we went over in pitch black across the channel. No lights on the ship. Pretty soon the ship stopped, the motor stopped, and no lights. And the captain said, "All right, girls, over the side." Now, I'm not a swimmer. And I said, "I don't know what you mean. I don't know how to go over the side." He said, "Look around here." He said, "See that rope going down the side of the ship?" I said, "Yeah." "Now, this is a great big ship." He said, "You turn around, you put your knapsack on your back," and he said, "You start going down that rope." I said, "Okay." He said, "When you get to the bottom, there'll be an LST there waiting for you, and those men will catch you if you should fall." So down the ship, the 30 of us girls went, got into the LST, and so still dark, we pulled up as close to the shore as they could get. They dropped the little gate and said, "All right, girls, you have to wade in." And we waded in from our waist. Got in on the shore and said, "Sit and just wait. Don't move," because we could hear the fire going up in front, And so we sat there until it got daylight. Then a truck came down, picked us up, and took us up to the mess line. See, it was about 6 o'clock in the morning then. And that's when we were walking through the mess line to get breakfast, and I said, "I'll be so glad when we get our clothes that we can change and get into some dry ones." And the young man back of me said, "Where are they?" And I said, "They're back on the beach. We just came in." And he said, "Well, I've got a Jeep, and I'll be glad to go back and get them for you." And that's how I met my husband.
And I'm going to ask you about that in a minute, but now you went in with 29 other women or whatever. Did you have rifles?
No,
Okay.
no.
Was the beach secure then?
Yes.
What day did you go in? June? Was it in June?
No, it was the last of July.
Okay, so most of that.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm kind of jumping around here, but the Omaha Beach landing was very brutal. It
Yes,
was a
yes.
very hard battle. A lot of American lives were lost in. What do you remember about it then? Did you know how bad it was during maybe July when you went into Utah? Had you known how many casualties or that had happened on that beach? Or
I don't remember.
Okay.
I'm sure I was cognizant of it, but if I think back, I think we were numb. We only worried about our own self. We, in a war, there's so much going on, so much happening, that you just have to be numb to some of it and just worry about yourself. I think I was more concerned, where are they going to put us? Are we going to have to sleep on the ground or on the tent? It was our own feeling of where they're going to put us.
What was your job on Utah Beach when you got there?
Nothing.
Really?
There was no office. There wasn't anything to do. We were just waiting for Paris to be taken.
So did you sleep on the beach, or?
No, they had tents. They knew we were coming. They had a 2-man tent set up for 2 girls in a tent, and you couldn't hardly stand up in it. It was just to come in and sleep. We had our own shower and lavatory, but it was all fenced in, and we knew that nobody else would be coming in. We were safe from anybody.
Tell me now the story about your husband and how you met him.
Well, after he picked us up and took my girlfriend and I back, we got our clothes and changed.
In the Jeep?
Yes.
Okay.
And came back. We changed our clothes, and then I said, what is there to do? And he said, well, we can go down to this farmhouse. They have apple cider and cognac, and we can go down and cognac. And that was all that was to do. Except one time, Bob Hope and Bing Crosby came. I think I've got a picture of them. And we got to go out into the orchard and sit on the ground, and they brought a truck in, and a singer. I can't remember what the girl's name was that was with those three, but I thought that was wonderful. That was our only entertainment that day, was Bing Crosby and Bob Hope.
Oh, wonderful.
Other than that, I was telling Terry about, I brought a picture. Utah was where 101st landed, and Noel had the Jeep, so we could go different towns. St. Mary Glees was where they landed, and so we would go up to St. Mary Glees and see. There wasn't anything in the town. There were no stores open or anything. But we ran into a family and became acquainted with them because it was right in the middle of where the 101st Airborne landed. And what was amazing, they had their cows in the house with them. And the family, and it was a grandfather and grandmother, a woman, and 3 or 4 children. And they had no food because there was no place for them to buy it in St. Mary Glees. Their garden had been torn up because of the fighting. Their animals was in the house. So Noel said, let's go back to the kitchen and see if we can't get some food for them. So we did. We loaded up whatever the kitchen would give us and took it back to them. So nearly every other day we made a trip and took them food while we were there.
Now, how long after the war were you married, or did you date? I mean, what did you do?
When Paris was taken and he was with the Signal Corps, he was sent in, his group was sent in to put the telephones back because we were afraid that the Germans had bombed the exchange. So they had to go in to make sure there was no booby traps and to set up the wire that we could talk to London and to Washington, because that was General Eisenhower's headquarters that we were setting up in Paris. So he was there for about 4 weeks putting in that, so I got to see him nearly every night. There wasn't any place to go except they hadn't started having movies for us or dances, but later they opened up a USO and did. So we would just fool around.
Cut? No. Oh, that's so sweet. And then, how many kids did you have?
We adopted 1 boy.
And where's he at?
He passed away.
Okay.
He was killed accidentally in '82, and then shortly after that, my husband had a heart attack and died.
Now, your husband was with what unit or division over there?
I don't remember. I can get it off of his discharge, but he was with the Signal Corps.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
And he went on up to the front line. His job was to go into a town after it was taken by the Army, set up telephone, and so that we could talk to them at the front line.
How do you feel about this weekend and being here? I mean, what are your thoughts with everybody being here and just, finally there's a memorial for the World War II generation. Unfortunately, a lot of the men have already passed away, but what are your thoughts and feelings about this weekend or expectations?
Oh, I'm thoroughly excited. I'm just elated to think that I've got a chance to come. I'm sorry my husband isn't here with me. It would have been so much better if we could have shared it together, but I'm sure he's here with me anyway. But I haven't been over to see it yet, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to our luncheon tomorrow with the women's organization, and then Saturday to have the dedication and all that's involved. It'll be a very momentous time in my life. It's one I'm going to write up about.
Yeah. Now, do you know where you're going to be sitting at? Do you have any?
It's open seating.
Okay.
We're in number 2.
Okay.
I have my ticket,
Good.
yeah, but it's first come, first served.
Yeah. I think that's all the questions. Is there anything that maybe other people have asked you that you think might be of interest to me, or maybe some of the questions the kids ask in the schools? There's anything that comes to your mind maybe about what you did that maybe I haven't asked that you could tell me?
I've had a child say, "Why did you join the service?" And I said, well, in the small town that I was working, every week another busload of young men would be leaving for the service. And it became difficult for us girls to find somebody to date. So the patriotic thing to do would be to join the service.
That's good. That's good.
And we did. But I do have 2 experiences,
Sure.
if you want to hear about it.
You bet.
In London, on Saturdays, Sundays, the USO always had special tours that we could take. So my girlfriend and I went over one day. We looked at it, and it was a tour to Windsor Castle. So we thought this would be a good tour to take. So we did. We got there, and the guide said, well, we won't be able to go through the castle because the king is in. That was King George. So he said, but we'll go through as many buildings as we can and see what we can. So we were in this one building with pictures, paintings on the walls. And the door opened, and the king and queen and Margaret and Elizabeth walked in. And so he came over to us, and he said, what do we have here? Well, he came up to me, and I said to myself, God, how do you greet a king? Do you genuflect? Do you kiss his finger, his ring? And all I could think of is stuck my hand out and said, I'm Helen Kogel. I'm on General Eisenhower's staff, and I work in London. So he said, oh, do you know Elizabeth? And I said, no, I don't. He said, well, she's just been assigned as a driver for American officers. I said, that's nice. I hope I see you sometime.
Oh, how wonderful.
And another time, it was 10 Downing Street that it was open for us to go. So my girlfriend and I said, well, let's go over there. We did. We walked in. Now, today you never could get in like we did, but the guard opened the door, and he said, you go into the reception room. And it was about 4 o'clock, which is tea time. We were good tea drinkers at that time. So we walked in, and the housekeeper came in and said, girls, would you like a cup of tea? We said, yes. So she handed it to us, and the door opened, and Winston Churchill walked in. Now, he walked in, picked up his cup of tea, and turned and walked out. But I wrote to my mother, and I said, guess what? I had tea with Winston Churchill today. You know, back in 1944, when we were celebrating the 50th anniversary, the newspapers were running a lot of articles about what men were doing in World War II on D-Day. And my girlfriend called a newspaper and said, you know, there's women that was over there too, as well as men. And they hadn't thought about it. And so she gave him my name. And they called me, and they did a television on all the stations about it. But I had been asked to be the speaker at Fort Gillem, which was, and they were having a big celebration for D-Day. And they called me and said, would you be our speaker? I had never spoken before, and I thought, I can't remember 50 years ago. But I remembered my mother saved nearly all my letters that I wrote. And I went back to the scrapbook and I started reading them. And this is where I picked up about Winston Churchill and those things. So it did give me something to talk about. And then I've been talking ever since.
Oh, wonderful. I got one more question. Eisenhower initially was going to land on June 5th.
Yes.
And then the weather delayed it one day. But were you informed of that? Was that having an effect on you or your job or anything that you were doing?
No, none of us knew. We knew that it was going to happen, but we didn't know when. And of course, it was terrible weather. And when it happened, it was a surprise to all of us. I mean, not really a surprise. We knew it was coming, but we had no idea what date. And I had no idea that there were that many soldiers camped along the English coastline waiting for D-Day to happen.
Did you have any interaction with any of the troops, or you were just not involved with any of the landing troops or any of the operation other than the battle plans? Is that all?
That's all I had.
Okay.
I did have two friends, two boys that I dated in Minnesota, and they were two of them that went, you know, that I didn't get to date anymore. And they were 101st Airborne, and they both were killed D-Day. Two of them in the same family.
I want to ask you a question. You may not know the answer, but I asked this to some of the wives that I interview, the husbands, and I'm still kind of piecing this together, but do you know the process for notifying families over here in the United States when a soldier was killed or wounded? Was it a Western Union telegram? Did somebody bring it to a home? Do you have the story behind that? How was the notification made?
No, it came by Western Union, and one of them sent somebody out to the house with the telegram. Or if a Army post were near, or Navy post, they would send somebody from the post. But a lot of these families, there wasn't an Army post anywhere near them, so it had to be by telegram.
So if you looked out the window and you saw, would you think it was recognizable that here comes a telegram? I mean, the anxiety of seeing that, or was it just like a mailman?
Just like a mailman.
Yeah. So they didn't stop, they just left it?
No, they gave it to him personally.
Okay,
They gave it to him personally. If they weren't at home, they waited and delivered it.
Because, you know, in the movies you see somebody from the military knocking on the door.
Yeah.
And
They would do that if you were near an Army post.
they would.
Yes, but when you're out in, like in South Dakota or in Minnesota, when there isn't an Army post except 200-300 miles, it was by telegram.
I want to ask you one more question. Now, I normally ask the veterans this question, but I want to ask you this question. After talking with them about their experiences on Omaha Beach, one of the last questions I like to ask is, what does freedom mean to you, Helen, in light of World War II, the sacrifices that were made then, and 2004? I mean, what does freedom mean to you, and the price for freedom?
I can't understand why the country is not behind the boys and girls in Iraq. If I had a son that was over there, I would support him. I would anyway. My VFW post has adopted a unit over in Kuwait. They're a group of Georgia boys of the National Guard. There's 80 girls and 171 men. And we're mailing books to them, personal things that the girls can't get at the PX. I'm making it my project of making sure, and we're sending cards to them. I email them just about every day, tell them what's going on. And they are so grateful. this commander said, "I'm so sorry that this wasn't happening when we were in Vietnam." And he said, "You have no idea how much we appreciate it." When I talk to the school children, I don't tell them anything of that, they might not want to hear. I want to make it an educational talk. But it's very surprising, the questions that they ask. Of course, the first thing said, "Did you have to carry a gun?" No. "Were you scared?" I said, "Absolutely. Absolutely, I was scared. I was petrified." And it took me at least 6 months after I got home that I could stand it when somebody slammed the door, because I could still feel the fright that I had from the V2 bombs. But I think these children ought to hear it. But I said the most important thing is respect for your flag and for your country, because you have to start at the age that you are right now.
Do you think those kids understand the price for freedom and that freedom's not free?
Yes, because they write me little notes and said how much they enjoyed what I said. I hope.
Yeah.
But they're very attentive. You could hear a pin drop when I was talking. And of course, then I took my dog tags and my medals and PX card and things like that they could look at.
What age are these kids that you're talking?
Fifth graders.
Yeah.
That's when they start talking. Their class covers World War II.
A lot of the men that I've talked with were in combat, and for 50 years they haven't talked about anything.
And that I just can't get over it, that I never told my husband or my son or my family what I did over there. I wiped it out of my mind because we were told, don't talk about it. And so when Noel and I got married, it was more important to worry about whether we're going to find a refrigerator or a car or find an apartment, And when John got it 13 years old, 25 years to the day that we were over, Noel and I were over there, we took a trip because I was working for Delta, we took a trip to Paris. We got a car, and we drove all around where I was stationed. We showed him the headquarters where I was, the hotel I lived in, and all through France and Germany where Noel worked. And then the next year we went to London and showed him all about London. Still never told him what I had done. It wasn't important. It's just something that it was a job I had. But now I see how much it is, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, and what I'm doing with you and with these men is, I'm recording a piece of history that's going to be lost when they're all gone.
That's right.
It's and that's what's so important going into the schools, is that these kids are seeing firsthand, they're hearing firsthand an account of what happened in a very important time in our history versus just reading it in a book. And it's really making an impact. And I admire you for what you're doing with the school.
I sent all my Stars and Stripes home to my mother to keep. So when I started talking to schools, I went and got them, and I laminated them. And it started with, the first one was when Pearl Harbor was hit, and then when war was in D-Day. And then I carried it through Europe, and when the war was over. I had them all laminated. And last April, it was about that time that schools were getting children to write a story, interview somebody in World War II. So this young boy came to the house and he said he had to interview me. But he didn't know what questions to ask. And I had given these Stars and Stripes several times to students to read, but bring them back. Well, this child never brought them back, and I still don't have them. And I'm sorry, because it's history.
Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
We've been to the newspapers, we've been to the schools, we've been everywhere, and we have not been able to locate
Went to
this
every
child.
school. I don't think he wrote it. And that's why the teacher didn't know it. But next week, the Atlanta Journal is going to have a big story about me. And I'm hoping that the mother will realize then that I'm the one that gave him those papers, and they need to bring them back.
Now, when did you do the interview with the Journal last week, the Atlanta Journal?
Yes, last Tuesday.
Was there questions different than mine, or what was this?
No, she just did like you. Just tell me your story.
Yeah.
She had done it. She had interviewed me in 1995, 94, 50 years ago. But she came back because she's doing it in a different angle.
I'm about to try to get a copy of that. I'd like to see that story.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I'd love that. You bet. I mean, that's good stuff.
She's